Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speakers Show. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and today we have a special show because we're recording this about mid-March 2020. I'm not trying to keep this evergreen. I want to make sure that we bring you what you need in the moment that you need it. It's pretty chaotic all around us right now, but I think this show will be helpful for people no matter actually when you're listening, because we're going to talk about how to really prepare and thrive during difficult times. My special guest is an expert in chaos. Welcome to the show, Gerard Braud. How did you like that?
Yes.
How did you like that introduction?
I've been called worse.
You are an expert in chaos. Tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a crisis communications expert, and my specialty is helping organizations, companies communicate when there is a crisis, how to communicate with the media, how to communicate with your employees, how to communicate with your customers. And I'm all about planning and then responding according to what the plan is. So
Yeah.
now people are going to think that I'm super busy right now. You can also be surprised how many people have failed to plan and will keep trying to wing it. And part of the reason you and I started talking at the end of last week was we want to make sure our speaker buddies aren't trying to wing it. And because I've been through so many personal crises in my own life, I don't just preach crises to people, I live it.
You've lived it, and that really, no doubt it was all very much a planned strategy for Jared to really understand crisis from the core. No,
Thank God.
that is not the case. That is not the case. But you have actually lived not just one or two, but really several. Your biography is chock-a-block with crisis.
Yeah.
So walk us through, and there's so many things to unpack in what you just said. I keep thinking, ooh, the government could probably use some help right now with communication, but we won't go there. Okay, we're not here to talk about that necessarily, but let's talk about the things that you have been through and what we can, and we'll go in afterwards and we'll unpack to make sure that we can, help people with the lessons. It may be too late for this crisis to really help people, but I do believe that we can be of service going forward here. And we'll also give people a few ideas of what they can be doing right now.
Yeah, so some of it it's too late for, and some of it is perfect timing for. So
Okay.
let me give folks a brief history. So my first personal crisis was right at 16 years ago, 2004, February 28th. I had a strange pain in my side. Started driving home across the world's longest bridge. Ended up on the other side of the bridge in an ambulance, which took me to a hospital, and I didn't come out for 21 days. And home for 6 weeks, went back into the hospital for 15 more days, couldn't work for 6 months. I had a blood clot in a very weird location called the mesenteric artery, which is a big spider vein that feeds your intestines, and it killed 10 feet of my small intestine. So that's the high level view. But
Wow.
I remember the doctor coming to my bedside and giving me some very sobering advice. He says, "Mr. Braud, I know you travel to train and to speak. And my advice to you is if you leave your house at any time for the next 6 months, you will die." And I thought, okay, that's very persuasive. That doctor.
Talk about persuasive communication.
Point received. And,
Okay.
and so
Wow.
I had my income come to zero. And it was so interesting because I remember being in the hospital and I had a media training job that I had to do on Monday. And I was supposed to be flying out on Sunday, and I was in a fetal position in the most excruciating pain you could ever imagine. And on the phone, calling a colleague, asking if they could pick up my media training job, which is a training course that I teach, and found somebody else to go pick that up for me. But I literally couldn't work for 6 months. And the only revenue that I had was because I was ill, the NSA Foundation was able to help me out, which has made me just forever grateful to NSA and to the foundation.
Let's
So,
talk about the foundation for a minute, because actually they're going to be a part of your maybe not the next time of chaos, but the one after that. They
yeah,
have been. So if you are a member of either the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers or of the National Speakers Association. I am uncertain globally what the GSF has in place, but I do know that we on both sides of the border have funding. We do fundraisers every year. You all are doing great auctions, and I'm sure your fundraising has been stronger than it's ever been. And talk about what that foundation money is used for in times like this.
Yeah. So in times like this, I don't know that that anyone would receive funds because of business interruption. That's not something that they cover. They
Right.
do assist you in catastrophic illness. They do assist you in catastrophic natural disasters. So when there
Mm-hmm.
are fires in California, the foundation is there, and I serve on the foundation. When the tornadoes hit over in Nashville a couple of weeks ago,
Yep.
immediately word went out to people in that region. When the flooding hit Houston, immediately we let people know that if your home's destroyed, if your business is destroyed, so it's that massive destruction or catastrophic illness where it really comes in to
Okay.
play. And it's life-changing. After Hurricane Katrina, which happened in 2005, the next part of my interruption story, 1 year after I was sick, my business was literally just recovering, and I was just rebuilding the business when Hurricane Katrina hit. And the NSA Foundation raised $187,000. Well, I shouldn't say that the foundation was the core, but our members were writing massive checks, and $187,000 was raised just for New Orleans, and made a huge difference to a lot of people in our chapter.
And I want to say that they had money in people's bank accounts like almost before they could blink. That was really something that just I could cry thinking about it right now. Okay, so I just want to be clear, because you're on the board, I'm really happy we're getting like insider scoop. If your calendar was wiped out, let's say for March, April, May, and you are in dire financial situation, the NSA may not be a place for you to turn at this moment.
Right. That's not a likely thing.
Okay.
And I'm not final word on this. This is not official word, but it's not a likely thing that the foundation would kick in on, because the foundation does expect, and NSA as a whole is starting to preach and teach a little bit more about financial planning. Which is one of the things we need to talk about in this, because some speakers truly run their speaking business like a business, and they save money and put away money.
Right.
Other people literally live paycheck to paycheck. They call themselves professional speakers, and they're possibly great on stage and whatnot, but from a business standpoint, they don't save for their retirement, or they don't save for rough times. And if you're not doing that, that'll be one of the things we talk about today, which is how to set up a strategy.
Right.
Since the time is right, I'll tell you at our house, from the beginning of me starting my business, 35% of every dollar that comes through the door is escrowed. 35% is set aside to pay our taxes and some other things. And so, for example, I just got my tax notice from my CPA on Saturday, because Friday I said, hey, look, I might need to live off of some of that money. I'm already getting cancellations. Get me my tax return as soon as possible. Not only will I get a chunk of money from the federal government that I've overpaid, but I also have squirreled away a bunch of money surplus out of that 35% that I'm going to get to keep. So out of that 35% in the United States, I know you're in Canada, we pay quarterly taxes in the US. So I save 35%, but if my tax rate is 27%, I send 27% in, and I keep that other 6, 7, 8%. I'm not good at math. And I keep that other percentage. And then after all the taxes are settled, I get to keep the rest of the pot. So
So
that's
what,
what I was
I don't
saying.
even care what the amount is. I think it's
Yeah.
just really important that you say escrow, chunk
Yeah.
this aside. And
Mhm.
really, if we came right down to it, we talked about this, some of my speaker friends before, Greg and Bob, about if you take a deposit in.
Yeah.
I recognize this because having worked in a speakers bureau that ultimately ended up going bankrupt, if you take a deposit in, that
Yeah.
money should be going into an escrow account, not your
Yeah.
operating capital. And
Yeah.
so that's just something to think about. I know not a lot of
I'm
people are
still
thinking,
guilty of not doing that as well as I should.
as am I. And so somebody said, well, Jane, if that's the case, then you should really be putting, let's say somebody hires me for a year-long coaching program, I should be putting all of that money into the fund and taking it out as I coach them. And I don't have that kind of technical skill or discipline to do it, but I
Yeah, I would
should be doing
disagree.
better at it.
I,
Should be
I
doing
would
that.
disagree though, because if somebody has paid you for a year of coaching in advance and
Mm-hmm.
you're coaching them, that's fine. Now, if something happens to you and you can't finish the next 6 months of the year, yeah, some people are going to
Yeah,
want their money back and others are going to let it
sure.
fly. But,
So
part of what
let's talk,
happened,
wait, we haven't finished your history yet because
yeah,
but wait, there's more. This is
I
like
got
a
more.
Ginsu knife show.
Yeah,
Okay, so first, actually, in order to even get into speaking, you got laid off from an amazing job, and that
yeah,
led into this.
yeah,
Then you had a life-threatening illness.
yeah,
Then Hurricane Katrina hit, and there were speakers in your chapter whose houses literally floated down the street. I
yeah,
mean, we're not talking about, oh, well, you're a speaker, you can just pick up and operate anyway. Their
yes,
house was gone.
yes,
Everything was gone.
right.
And that was so incredibly devastating. Then 2008 hits, and like many speakers, uh,
The economic downturn. Yeah,
we saw an economic downturn and the economy shifted again into recession. And so you have had your share of hits, but luckily you had started to figure out your savings idea
right.
kind of after crisis number 2,
Hmm.
which was really smart. And
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about how you persevered, even psychologically, from, oh no, this is bad, this is really bad, I cannot work for 6 months. So, and one of the reasons why I want to talk about this is because there are people out there who have had their calendars cleared and they're upset, and I totally understand that. And
Yeah.
there will be some people who are in really rough shape, and I hope they have saved for a rainy day. There are some of my clients who I know they're quite devastated by this. But you persevered and you could not work for 6 entire months. How did
Right.
you manage that mentally?
Um, because the doctor told me I would die, that was my mental state, which is I'm going to do what I need to do. And when I did go back out on the road, it was very rough. I'd have to cancel flights because the pain was so bad, and I'd lay in hotel rooms sometimes for 48 hours before I could function again. So even going back after 6 months was very, very painful. But I'm a glass that's half full kind of guy. I'm an optimist. And so that's a blessing that's just my personality type. And every
Mm-hmm.
one of us needs to know what our personality types are. I believe in God. I have faith, and my religion, my faith, helped me out a lot. Some people will have that. Some people won't have that. And each person has to decide what's right for them. But I also knew that I could start up a business at any point. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. My first enterprise was when I was 5 years old, selling lizards that I would catch in my yard. I would sell them for 3 cents to a guy who would sell them for 5 cents to a local snake farm, a little tourist attraction on the side of the highway. So I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I know I can go cut grass if I
Mm-hmm.
have to in order to feed myself. So
Oh,
that
you
kind of belief that I can always restart the business.
Yep.
And so therefore, my belief right now that I'm going to be okay is stronger than it was, but it's clearly a mental state that every one of your speakers and all of our speaker friends need to first get over the panic. And we'll talk about ways to get over the panic and ways to plan. But I think you had a follow-up question.
Well, yes, I think it's such a good thing to talk about is in your mind, just mapping out worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So last Friday, I get on a plane just a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
and I'm going to Dallas for a conference. And I'm nervous because we're in the throes of this now, and I'm thinking I'm going to get quarantined in Dallas. That's my, and so what I actually just thought through was worst case scenario.
Yes.
Okay, what if they say I'm stuck there? Then what? Or what if something happens? I had all of these different kind of worst case scenarios mapped out and what I was going to do if that happened. You know, worst case scenario cost me a lot of money because I'm in a hotel that's very expensive, blah, blah, blah. Next stage down, I go to an Airbnb. Next stage down, I drive home to Canada. Next stage down, like I had kind of everything plotted out. And don't you think it makes you feel a little bit better if at the other end is death,
Right.
which in your situation it could be, you know, because of you traveling, but coronavirus for the majority of us right now, we're not going to die from it unless we're compromised in our lungs or what have you, or we're a senior. The worst case scenario is that we are locking down inside our house for a period of time. Yeah. And that our calendar is clean. That is a pretty bad worst case scenario. So
Right.
let's just talk about how to get past the panic.
Yeah. So reality check number one is this is not a 2-week process.
Mm-hmm.
Minimum 90 days, probably 120, likely to 150. And I'm basing this off of people I'm talking to in corporations where I work who are global companies that are already my clients. And this is based off that idea that there is a uptick bell curve of illness, and then it comes down on the other side.
They followed in China. China's already at the other end of this.
That's what's given us that idea that it's probably 120 to 150 days that a speaker needs to be prepared for. Okay. And until everybody starts to get into the realm of social distancing, we're not going to change things very much. This weekend, for example, in New Orleans, it was St. Patrick's Day. We're recording this on March 16th. So they canceled the St. Patrick's Day parades, but they didn't connect the dots and close the bars. So Bourbon Street is filled with a party atmosphere.
And they told them to go home.
I decided to social distance this weekend. My wife and I went out for dinner for the final time on Friday night. It was our 39th wedding anniversary. We're going to go for the nice dinner, you know, Cindy. So I took Cindy out and we said, all right, we're going to start distancing ourselves. And the restaurant was already pretty empty. But it doesn't do me any good to personally do it if the drunks on Bourbon Street are now 2 weeks away from their infection, right? So, so as speakers, you know, I started getting cancellations 2 weeks ago, and I posted on the NSA Facebook page. And one of the things that we're all talking about is virtual. And if you don't get paid for it, I would say give it away. There is one speaker who commented on the Facebook page that the event was canceled, but she and all of the speakers are asked just to show up at the venue, and they're going to, the association is going to broadcast the entire event live, which I think is absolutely amazing. So all these speakers will still get paid for their presentation. I had a second job get canceled that was supposed to be right about 6 weeks from now. And they relocated it to September and even asked me, do you think September is long enough? And I went, that should be just about perfect. I said, in the meantime, let's do a webinar immediately. I'm not even discussing money with them because the information that I was going to convey to that audience about crisis communication is more timely now than ever before. So we all write a lot of content and do a lot of social media content, blogging, videos. Just keep doing those, maybe do more of them and give away more information. I've never ever seen anybody in life who gives away, who doesn't get more back. It's just
Yeah.
karma
And
of the universe or your faith
yep,
in God or whatever spirituality you
I
believe in.
love that.
Maybe it's just the reality,
What
but
goes out.
stay in the mode.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And you're shifting away from panic and it's all about me and
yeah, yeah.
you're shifting into a mode of how may I be of service?
Yeah, abundance.
So, and I actually am going to put a late last night about 10:30, I'm scribbling on my iPad and I came up with my top 10 ways to survive the situation list, which we're going to turn into a nice article, which we will then attach to the show notes of this video. This is, by the way, people done in video and audio. You can watch it on YouTube if you choose as well. So, but the stance that we took, so I had my own live event 2 weeks ago in Phoenix
Yeah,
when all of the rain was starting to pour down on us.
right.
Everybody showed up, Jared. It was so heartwarming. I could have just cried when they were just all standing there. I'm like, thank you for coming. Like, I can't believe you're here.
Yeah,
I can't believe you're here. And thank you for coming. And we came up with a little bit of an approach. And the stance is, if your mindset is shifting from, oh no, woe is me, to how may I be of service, it really does a lot of good for your mindset. And I'm very fortunate that I've been doing about 12 months of kind of mental conditioning leading into this,
yeah.
because I think I myself would be struggling, and I have had moments of panic.
Mhm.
And so one of my other tips that's on the sheet is balance your, Brooke Castillo, who I study, says that your brain is looking for a way to be startled. And so you're going to go seek out the news and get your startle. Balance your intake of negative with an intake of positive. So read or watch something that will make you feel good. Meditate, do all of the things that you need to do to really bring yourself back around mentally. When you were sick in the hospital for all that time, how did you bring yourself back mentally? Did you watch some things that made you laugh or something like that?
I'll be honest. It was so hard. I watched nothing for weeks on end. I couldn't process information. Everything was difficult. I mean, it was
Wow.
really dark. There were days when I thought I was going to die. I mean, I remember the day I really thought I'm going to croak right here in the chair. And it wasn't until one day when I could finally, pardon me, one afternoon I put on the TV and there was a funny show on. It was actually Ellen DeGeneres, and it was the first time I laughed in 4 months. I mean, it was dark, but
Wow. And that actually, the Ellen
I
show,
needed to laugh.
I
I
have been
needed to laugh.
watching what are they doing on the show just to see, like,
Yeah,
and I think that she looks at it as her job to keep
yeah,
people laughing.
yeah,
And that is one of the ways to, think about it, garbage in, garbage out. The
yeah.
news isn't garbage, but it's all bad. And if that's what you're doing is it with your time. So I also have another thing that I'm starting. It's hashtag productive quarantine. So
Well,
if
that's yes,
you need to be on your own, and of course we're all social distancing now.
yeah,
My husband is still out on the road, but he's kind of in and out of people's houses and businesses, and so
yeah,
we're kind of just keeping an eye on that. I think they're going to shut our city down at 1 o'clock today. I think there's an announcement coming that the whole
right,
city will be shut down, and I
right.
think he will be coming home and staying home.
So the question is,
Um,
can you sing like an Italian out of your window? Because
Well, you know what? We're going to try, because us and our neighbors will be sitting out on our back deck, and we will make the most of this. We've been FaceTiming our friends for cocktail hour
yeah,
already.
yeah.
And, we didn't go for our Friday night dinner. We
So,
all
so,
canceled.
so to your point, one of the advantages that we have is it's sunny. So I live on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain. I can go for a walk and have social distancing. I've got a
Yes.
garden in the backyard. I spent all weekend planting plants and
Yep.
gardening. So I'm getting sunlight, and we're lucky that this catastrophe is hitting during this time of year.
Yeah.
So that's the first big blessing and the first big advantage. And my house is, distanced greatly from my neighbors, but we can still talk to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Backyard's not too far away, but it's that social clustering and that NSA, I have to hug you and be at the meeting with you. I'll be honest, we had
Not
our
going to do it.
chapter meeting Saturday, and we have Facebook Live opportunity, and Patricia Fripp was there, who we all adore, but
Mm-hmm.
I made the decision Friday at noon that I wasn't going Saturday morning, that I would get all of the learning without all of the germs. And let's go back to something you had touched on just briefly.
Okay.
As I touch my face, and I think,
I know face touching is like the worst thing we could do, but we're all sterilized inside our house right now.
Right. So
yeah.
For a speaker who, let's talk to the ones who are in panic mode, and then we'll go to the ones who are less in panic mode and more in the prepared mode. So cut your spending where it's practical to cut spending.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got laid off from my job in 1994, or 1996, from that dream job, right? First thing I did was cut spending. What don't I need? Mm-hmm. So cut cable TV, boom, it's gone. Health club membership, boom, it's gone. Lots of things that I could cut, I cut. I did the very same thing in 2004 when I was sick. I made a point, I had no choice after 2005, after Katrina. In 2008, I tried to cut less because I had already started saving more, because I feel a certain personal responsibility to keep the economy alive. I'm not going to do it by myself.
Yep.
But this morning I canceled. We have a lady who comes in once a month to help with the deep cleaning of our house. We clean our house on a regular basis, but she comes in, but she's an elderly person. And I called her this morning and I said, May, I'm going to mail you a check for $75. Don't come on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And so if you have to cut where it's practical.
Yeah, but
spend where it's practical.
If you don't have to, I would like to call on all of us opportunists to say, let us do our part to keep the economy going. And so this is a great time to find investments at rock bottom prices, is it not? Now that goes up and down every single day.
Refinance your house in the US.
Oh, you could refinance your house. That would be worth the paperwork alone right there, right? If you're up for refinancing, let's take a look at that. And that could be saving you hundreds of dollars a month right there. Yeah. So I would say that my goal is for everybody to go, okay, let's not just shut everything down, because that will indeed tend to move us into the recession even more quickly. Right. So let me just ask you a quick kind of crisis question. Based on your research, and you're a pretty smart guy, and I know you keep your ear to the ground, do you think that the warm weather is going to help this situation like it would with the normal flu? No. What have you heard about that?
So what people don't realize is flu is seasonal. So for example, our oldest daughter, Elizabeth, lived in New Zealand for 6 years. She just moved back to the States. But, it was summer when we had winter and vice versa. She didn't have flu when we had flu at home. It's different in pandemic than it is for flu. So if you're watching some newscast or reading a friend's post on social media that says, why are we so worried about this? H1N1 kills 200,000 people a year. It does. But we don't know this flu yet and how this flu will react. But this flu is already spreading in warmer climates right now.
Right.
We are already in 80-degree temperatures and is blowing up here. Okay. So from a practical standpoint, according to the experts, because this is Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, as well as the circumference of the globe, that makes it a pandemic. And unlike flu that tends to fester one way, this one festers a different way. The contagion is different. And then the fact that it attacks your lungs and leads to a pneumonia type situation is very different than some of the other flus. So to that extent, it's different. It's not apples to apples. You can't compare one to the other.
All right. All right. When you said your 150 days, I was hoping that would be a factor in it. Okay, so
Summer's not
let's
a factor of anything other than the fact that you're lucky you can get out of your house and it's not snowing.
and also most speakers probably didn't have a packed June, July, and August to begin with. The real months that are probably feeling it
Spring
so
is,
brutally.
yeah.
But most of our clients, I think what we're seeing a lot of is postponements rather than straight up cancellations. Would you
Right.
agree with that and what you're seeing from NSA as well?
Yeah, which allows you to keep those deposits that you were sitting on.
Right, and we're moving them forward. And
Yep.
in the meantime, how may I be of service? I also see this as an opportunity for you to go back to all of your clients with that attitude of service.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
What can I do for you? Especially you. I mean, you speak on crisis communication, and there are a lot of companies out there who are doing a poor job of it right now. So I would think that Jared could turn around, go back to all of the clients that he's spoken for, let's say over the past 5 years, and just check in. Not, hey, have you got any business from me? I think the stance is, hey, this is a hard time. How are you doing? And
Absolutely.
if you're saying, I'm here, I can be of service if you need me, then I think that would just be a nice gesture. And I don't think that anybody would look poorly on, hey, how you doing?
I agree with you. I think another thing that speakers should be prepared to do that I learned to do in my downtime is to retool the business. So many of
Good
us,
one.
so many of us run businesses where you pray for the next speaking job and then that marketing flywheel starts turning and then you get so busy, you lose the marketing and then the flywheel doesn't keep turning and 6 months from now you have a downturn because you're so busy out working.
Yep.
And it's very hard to run a speaking business. What's really bizarre about what we all do for a living is we love to speak, yet that is a small fraction of our job unless you're the super wealthy speakers who are booked completely by bureaus, which I'm not. You know, I'm a specialty speaker. Any organization that hires me or considers me will replace me with a legislative update on coal before I ever actually get on stage. So I don't lose to Mark Schurenbrock, I lose to
Coal.
legislative update. It's like, no, I haven't. Why did I pick the worst niche in the world? That said, though, that said, part of what we've got the ability to be doing right now is retooling our business. So one of the things that I did during my recuperation in 2004 is I had one of the products I do for people is I write a written crisis communication plan.
Right.
And that could take collaboration. I make fun of the word collaboration because I hate collaboration, right? I'm a loner. But it would take a year to year and a half for the corporate people to all touch it and get consensus. And maybe I'd make $50,000, but I had one of those in process and I had the final step and the final $5,000 of payment when a new vice president came in and said, we're going in a different direction. After a year and a half of work, she voided our contract with this company and stiffed me for $5,000, which I desperately needed. And I went, never again, we're getting rid of this. So here's how I retooled my business. I took all of the plans I'd ever written from the United States Army to the Internal Revenue Service, some really blue chip clients. And in that downtime, I opened up all these computer files and I wrote down everything that was consistent from organization to organization. And I turned it into a 60-page template. And then the other part of that is news releases. I have a library of news releases that I provide to clients. And what I did was create a 2-day workshop for less money with the idea that instead of you paying me $50,000 for a year's worth of work, we will do this in 2 days. And I think I initially started out at $2,500 for the 2 days. It's now, you know, that's 16 years ago. So now it's about $10,000 for 2 days. But it's that idea that in 2 days we finish this. and I can sell 5 for 10,000 instead of 1 for 50,000. And that was the business model that I adopted, which has really served me well going forward. I can now do that for clients who, I had a client the other day that we're supposed to do this for, and they've already paid me 30,000 for like a whole bunch of facilities that we're going to do this at. What I'm telling them is, you know what, we're going to do this virtually, because they called me and said, you can come into our facility, but not if you fly. And I said,
Right.
okay, I'll drive. But that was a week ago that I said I will drive. Now I'm going to go, you know what, we can do this in 5 hours over Zoom, or we can do this an hour a day for 5 days, however you need to spread it out. But the idea that I retooled one of my training products into something that has made me far more successful,
Right.
far more unique, that's awesome. Now, there was another idea that I had that is only coming to fruition now, which was to invent a software product that would do what I'm doing. So I am in the midst of launching a software crisis communications product right now.
Wow.
And I'm trying to push it out the door even faster, because it is exactly for Corona. I didn't do it back in 2005 and 2004 because there wasn't enough computer technology to support it. Cell phones were not prolific at that time. So internet connectivity is vital. And so now we have a proliferation of connectivity. The time is right for me to launch this software. The other reason I didn't do it is because I didn't have the money. And I came up with enough money, and this has been a 4-year project. And so the future for me, I've always realized I'm tired of traveling. I'm tired of getting on airplanes. I'd much rather be at home with Cindy. I'd much rather be in my garden. I'd much rather be kayaking on the lake. I'm 62 years old. I'm ready to stay home. I love my home more than I love the Marriott courtyard. So for that reason, a retooling idea from one of my downtimes is making a difference for me.
Yeah, that's good.
Savings idea really happened, also through those, but I'm building the next product that is going to let me hopefully retire and you make money in your pajamas or your Coca-Cola shirt staying at home. I want to do the same thing.
I am getting paid for this.
Software. You are. You are. No. Exactly. David
Okay,
Newman
so
always brags that he wears no pants. Exactly. I wish you would stop bragging about that.
I just want to give everybody some language to be asking themselves, what do they have that they can repackage and repurpose? So right now, it's a speech. Could the speech be turned into a remote training program? Could the speech be turned into a book that and hashtag productive quarantine? Let's be getting those books outlined. They're probably going to be like a lot of babies and a lot of books popping out at the other end of this thing, right?
You say that. I was thinking the same thing. But yeah,
babies
exactly.
And books.
So everybody's looking for this downtime. I have no time to write my book, right? My book was written, you ready for this? During a hurricane, right? So I was evacuated from my home for a different hurricane, Hurricane Gustav in 2009 or 2010. Right. And while I was evacuated from my home and there was no electricity or services in Metro New Orleans, I was sitting by a pool in Florida where it was sunny, and I would get out every morning to make a Bloody Mary and sit by the pool. And I started writing. I just adopted a shopping cart, and I was trying to fill my funnel. I have this great speaker coach. I don't know if you ever heard of Jane Atkinson. And she was telling me I needed carrots that I could dangle. And so I was creating, and I was an early lover
a lead magnet.
Podcast. Right, lead magnet. So I was told I had to dangle the carrot. The lead magnet is what it's called now. So I was creating 15 podcasting episodes that I was going to give away. And I wrote those with the idea that I would start recording them as soon as I got home. When I got to 15, and all I was doing was I was writing the conversation I was having in my media training classes, those small group trainings that I do. I just took what I said and I wrote it all down in verbal conversation as writing, because I wanted verbal conversation for the podcast. And those 15 ideas turned into 29 ideas, which led to the book, Don't Talk to the Media Until, and then ... 29 lessons you need to know before you open your mouth to a reporter. It came out to be 29 podcasts that filled my lead magnet, and that became a book that I could then sell. So if you don't have your first book or you don't have your next book, now's a good time to do it. Same thing with your website. If you've been wanting to write new content, then do it. If you've been wanting to start a YouTube channel, now's the time to do it. There are so many things that you can do to be productive, especially if you're not in panic mode of where is my next check going to come from.
Yeah. And I think really one of the bottom lines of all of this is to really manage your mind, really think about what are the thoughts that are dominating your brain all day, every day.
Yeah.
Really look at what's coming in and what you're putting out and whether or not that's serving you or the world.
Yeah.
Gerard, you have given us so much to think about on this little podcast that we're doing here. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, please.
Sure. My website is Braud, B-R-A-U-D Communications. So you see that right there. Braud Communications is my website. So you'll find me on LinkedIn as Gerard Braud. You'll find me on Twitter as GBraud. And my email is Gerard, spelled like Gerard, G-E-R-A-R-D, @braudcommunications.com. But, you know, we're part of the NSA family. I'm on CSP Link on Facebook. I'm in the Facebook group for National Speakers Association. So you can always find me there and message me there. And I would say, you know, if we're looking for what should you do next, I would say stop, breathe, go sit under a pretty tree or back on your patio and get out a legal pad or a notebook and just start making a to-do list of the things that need to be done. And I think people can quiet their mind. I'm not a meditator. The way I quiet my mind is to put it on paper.
I like
And
that.
if you start finding that you're waking up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep, keep a notepad by your bedside. It's been very useful for me over the years that if I wake up with an idea, I write it down. Or if I'm stressed about something, I write it down on a piece of paper. But go sit under a tree and write down a list of what needs to be done, both in your personal life or personal distancing, going grocery shopping. You don't need an excessive amount of toilet paper. That's not the type of virus that we
That's
have
become clear.
that's not the type of virus that we need. But make a list of the things that you can do. And then just be open to the ideas that will come to you of how to retool. You know, this is a time where if you've put all of your eggs in the basket of, I'm a keynote speaker, I don't need to train, you don't have an audience right now. Whereas some people, I've always wanted a greater keynoting audience rather than an 8-hour training, but I'm an 8-hour training guy. So I know that my trainings will go forward, but just think and be open to the possibilities, start a big list, and do what's practical for you. And always remember the NSA rule that just because one person tells you to do it doesn't mean you need to do it. So if I told you to do it, you're welcome to do the exact opposite if that proves most fruitful. Jane, you and I are just sharing ideas with people.
Our goal is to just spur an idea. All we want to do is just spur an idea that might take you in a more positive direction. I love what you said, because back when I was at my event 2 weeks ago, I wrote out on my iPad, coronavirus strategy, what am I going to do? And it just calmed me right down. I mean, it really, once you have your strategy in place, it will just calm you right down. And I love the idea of going outside, because outside can be incredibly calming. I'm so glad that we brought you. You know that there's a saying, and I'm going to get it wrong, but you felt bad that you had no shoes until you saw somebody with no feet or something like that. I brought you in for the no feet example,
Well,
Jared.
I have feet, I just don't have intestines.
You know, so I just wanted people to know that, look, it can get pretty dire when you
Yeah.
can't work at all for 6 months. That's a pretty dire situation. And I do understand that people are in rough shape here, but we do hope to have given you a few ideas. Gerard Braud, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Always good to be with you. I always, you're a wealth of information. And you've just been important in my life, both as a friend
Oh,
and as a coach, and that is just awesome. And so
I
here
think
I
we're
am.
going to cry again right now.
All right, virtual, all the virtual hugs without all the germs.
All right, perfect. Hey, if you're listening in, let us know if this has been helpful for you. I hope that you have taken one or two ideas that will set your mind in a positive direction. And with that, we will say, see you soon, multi-speakers. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye.